This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Hello and welcome to News Extra. Today we look at the Middle East, where the changing shape of the terrain has once again completely burst every expectation. The Middle East has seen a very sharp change in its shape with the ouster of Bashar Al-Assad as President of Syria. The removal of Assad brings to an end at least over 2 decades of the Al-Assad family ruling Syria. Now, as the world comes to grips with the changing power, the question of just what this means for Africa and Nigeria has arisen. Joining the conversation is Mutala Abdullahi, a security and conflict analyst. Mr. Abdullahi, good morning. Welcome to News Extra.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I wonder if you could speak to us about Syria. First of all, the removal of Bashar al-Assad as president of Syria is something that has been whispered for a few years, but it has finally happened. And as it has played out so far, we've seen quite the horror show from that country. Let's talk about Syria, first of all, before we come to Africa. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess it's a very joyous moment for a lot of Syrians. They've been waiting for this for a very long time. It almost seemed like it was not going to happen. A lot of governments in the Middle East were beginning to bring back Bashar al-Assad because it was understood that he is now the winner of that the civil war. There were a lot of efforts to rebuild his image, considering that the assumption was conflict was at a stalemate. At the time, also the rebels who were confined to a place in Italy were working very hard to build up the institutions for governance and also improve their military capability. And they had some bit of help. So you had the HDS, then also you had the SNA, the Syrian National Army that had Turkish support. So they were able to build up some form of, mostly in terms of the HDS, which has a very complicated history. Were able to build up the necessary combat skills, and then they began the assault on Aleppo, Homs. The collapse of the Syrian regime forces happened faster than even the rebels could anticipate, largely because of also some several issues. I believe that the Syrian society was no longer willing to go through another civil war. Morale was very low. And so the rebels were more of a professional force, while the Syrian army had lacked the potency to fight. And then also 2 of these key Syrian backers were no longer having the capability to support like they did over a decade ago. Russia was bogged down in Ukraine. And for the Iranians, also, they had other problems that they needed to resolve. Hezbollah was also severely damaged from the Israeli operations in Lebanon. So it was really a very tough time for Assad. And then also, I guess, the backers thought, why should we spend blood and resources again to save the Assad regime?
So let's come closer to home, right? Africa does, across the board, right? African countries have a few Syrian refugees who have taken up, if you like, asylum or residence in those countries. And it's not just in Africa, across the world, really. A lot of countries are now redefining their engagement with Syrian refugees and asylum seekers. Notably, countries like Germany and the United Kingdom have decided to halt what is their years-long approach as they watch the situation in Syria unfold. Here in Nigeria, I think we have up to 1,000 Syrian refugees who've been present for a few years now. How do you expect the Nigerian government to engage with these refugees while we watch the unfolding situation in Syria?
Well, yeah, for the refugee crisis, it's quite a big issue. It has shaped a lot of politics in especially in Europe. Turkey holds also a significant amount of Syrian refugees. There are already lots of reports that some refugees have begun to return back, especially those in Turkey. And I'm sure in some other places, some refugees will be going back. However, considering that some refugees have been outside the country for a very long time, they have built new homes, new connections, new ties, it could be a bit difficult for some to go back because now they have lineages and where they are. However, I know that potentially there could also be a source of just remittance and other support to the Syrian people. In the context of Nigeria, the Syrian refugees here or asylum seekers are not that a lot, like you stated. Bigger numbers, they are about 1,000. I guess the Nigerian government will be observing to see. But in terms of generally the Nigerian government observation will be about the broader impact of what's happening in Syria. We are not isolated. It may appear to be happening far away. However, some of the shocks could also reach here.
If you can speak to what some of these shocks would be, we do know that at the height of the Israel-Gaza conflict, we saw oil prices affected with the with the Houthi rebels in Yemen interfering with international oil trade. What sort of impact do you think the situation in Syria would be having on Africa and Nigeria at the moment?
Yeah, so in terms of the oil prices, it's not going to be it's not going to be an issue. I guess there will be a lot of markets that are a bit trying to understand what's going to happen next because Syria was part of a broader Iranian agreement in terms of Iranian expansion in the Middle East, and so now there will be a lot of changes. Potentially, Turkey filling that gap. So I guess some markets will be anticipating, waiting to see what's going to happen in Syria. In terms of the shocks for Nigeria, so Syria became a narco state. But narco state means that they were producing drugs, specifically Captagon, which was being sold across several parts of the world and became a significant source of funding for the previous government. The current HTC government or the new Syrian government is saying they will stop that trade. Nigeria, a few years ago, intercepted almost 500,000 Captagon kills that were going to be smuggled into the country in a joint operation that was supported with the Saudis. So, yeah, that's a major concern because the Captagon kills help fuel conflict because currently fighters in conflict areas some extra, I won't say energy, but drive. We know that a lot of times drugs help conflict, and so that's a major concern, I guess, for the Nigerian authorities. And I guess Nigerian authorities will be reaching out to in regard to that. Then secondly, also in terms of the war against the Islamic State, we know that in Nigeria we have athletes of the Islamic State there. So potentially now there will be more pressure. In fact, immediately after the government was removed, the U.S. conducted intense airstrikes in areas that used to be under the regime where ISIS was present. So there will likely be intense operations against ISIS, and that will have impact on the local state there. And these are some of the major impacts that we will be watching. I'm sure the Nigerian government are also excited to see what's happening.
I would like you to expand on that security impact a bit more. As much as there's quite a bit of distance between Nigeria and Syria, I mean, let's call them the frontline states, if you like, would be Northern Africa. And even at that, there's still quite a bit of ground to cover from Syria to the closest point, which would be Egypt, right? I'm curious as to whether you see any sort of that ripple impact, much like we saw in Libya, where rebel forces were essentially crossing country borders and we had weapons that flowed in. What sort of impact do you see security-wise for Northern Africa? And then when you come down to the Sahel states, the preparation that needs to be put in place?
Yeah, so Libya is a much closer dynamic in terms of the discussions around the disintegration of Libya and what it led to the current stalemate Libya and then the weapons trafficking and all that. For Syria, Syrians have been through the civil war. They've been through a more chaotic experience. So there's a lot of belief that what will come after in terms of the new, because we've already begun to see signs of repeat in the country. So it means that there will likely be a more institutional build-up that will happen, and we all understand that we cannot go through another civil war. We have to make this work. But I guess a lot of people are watching to see. So the more stability is in Syria, then the better it is for the world. We all remember that over a decade ago, in terms of the growth of the ISIS as a result of the conflict Haddad also provided some form of inspired other groups who were already active in terms of insurgency in different parts of the world. In Nigeria, Boko Haram pledged allegiance to Islamic State after the caliphate was created in parts of Syria and Iraq. That has been severely diminished in terms of their presence in Syria and Iraq. So sort of the U.S. coalition forces, and then also other elements of ground. And that now as Secretary Blinken said, the efforts against ISIS has put them in a box, and now it's important not to allow them to come out of that box. So I guess there will be continued effort to do that, and the more pressure is on them, the more it's going to affect their local athletes, whether in terms of their inability to communicate or inability to share technical know-how, inability to support, whether in terms of whatever it is, whether in terms of spiritual, financial, or moral kind of support, and that matters a lot.
Well, Mr. Abdullahi, thank you very much for your time and your expertise on this conversation.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Murtala Abdullahi is a security and conflict analyst, and he joined us on News Extra to speak on the ouster of President Bashar Al-Assad from Syria and the implications for Africa, and most especially Nigeria. That's News Extra on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, your Beyond the News station. We ask that you stay with us. In a few short moments, it'll be time for us to open up the front pages on our dailies as we bring you the news review. Good morning.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.